Hello, beautiful beings of love and light. Hello, how are you? Are you having a good day and living in your heart space and feeling full of love and joy and feeling the manifest power of your own divinity? Because that is who you are, and we should be living from a space of who we truly are. And that's why I'm here. I wanted to talk to you. Something was wanting to come out today. And I wanted to share that you are love. Your very being is love. And sometimes people will ask me this when I teach. How do you know that you are love? How do you know that the very essence of who you are is love? And what I always tell them is, it feels good. It feels good because it's in alignment. And it's that simple. Love is simple. The path of yoga, the path of union with who you truly are, is simple. Alignment is simple. We make it complicated with our mind. The mind makes it complicated. Our egos and our thoughts and how we judge things. That makes it complicated. But at the core, we are love. Unconditional love. And we know that because it feels good to feel in love. It feels good to have loving feelings and loving thoughts. And it feels good to come from that space of love and to give and to feel vulnerable and to express positive emotions. All of those things line up with our core nature. It's only because we have a gap between who we are and who we perceive ourselves to be that we experience anything other than the pure radiance and joy of our essential nature. See, we are beings that are unconditional in nature. The soul, the spirit that exists within us, that conscious awareness within us, it is unconditional. It is beyond the mind. It is beyond thought. It is in what we call a non-dual space. There is not two of us here. There's just one of us here. There's nothing prior to the mind that separates things into likes and dislikes and light and day and hot and cold. Duality comes out of matter. Everything in the mind and the emotions is a part of matter. If we start studying Vedic teachings, if we start studying non-dual teachings, which is really what the non-dual teachings are, they're actually sourced in what we call the Vedas, which means wisdom and knowledge, spiritual knowledge. If we start to study those teachings and we start to live those teachings, we start to realize that the mind, the emotions, everything that comes from the sense of what we can observe is all matter. I can observe my mind and its thoughts. I can observe that a thought comes in, a thought goes away. I can observe that that thought was positive. I can observe that that thought was negative. I can observe the emotion that that thought creates, because a thought creates an emotion. I can observe how I feel about that emotion and what thoughts, come up in my mind basically due to those emotions. And we store those thoughts in our memories. I like this, I don't like this. I want to have more of this. I never want to have more of that. I want to avoid that. And then we act on our thoughts and our emotions, and we create an action, and that action is called karma. And that action can be of any kind. It can be positive. It can be, a little wonky. There's a little wobble there. Or it can be not so good. It could be more negative in its nature. See, everything in material nature has frequencies. Everything in material nature has a certain vibration. And there's higher vibrations, there's lower vibrations, and then there's all the scales of vibrations in between. Just like emotions are on an emotional scale. There's really high positive, high flying emotions, and then there's really low resonating, dense, heavy, dark emotions, and all the emotional scales in between. Thoughts are on the same frequency. Everything is frequency. And anything that is within frequency, anything that is within vibration, is within the world of matter. And matter, again, has many different frequencies, many different resonances. So our thoughts, our emotions, our actions, thoughts create emotions. Emotions come from thinking. We have a thought and then we react emotionally to it. And then we have our likes and our dislikes, and all of our thinking really comes from that. So thoughts and emotions are really tied in together. I have a teacher that once said that thoughts are electrical and emotions are magnetic, which if you think about it, it's true. It's the emotional feeling that pulls energies of like frequencies to us. And so our thoughts and our emotions create our electromagnetic field that surround our body, and that pulls the like frequencies to it. So what we think and what we feel are really important in determining our experience of the life around us and the world around us. And then we act. We act based on our thoughts and emotions. And then we take those actions out into the world, and the world responds. And the whole cycle starts again. And then our character, who we truly are, is based on all of that. Who we truly are in a personality sense. I'm not talking about who we truly are in like higher self sense. I'm talking about the basic personality. Who we truly are as a personality. It's highly influenced by our thoughts and our emotions and our actions, because that develops our character. Things that are repeated, things that are habitual become our character. And then as we continue to do that, as we continue to carry out certain characteristics, that eventually becomes our destiny. So our whole life, if we are unconscious, which the mind is often so unconscious, our whole life can carry out in a very unconscious pattern and can end up creating a destiny that we think we don't have control over, but you do have control over it, because the blessing of all of that is that you are not your energy. You are not your frequencies. You are not your mind. You are not your emotions. You're not your body, because you observe those things. You have a body. You have energy. You have breath. You can observe the breath. You observe the breath. Get that? You observe the breath. Who is doing the observing? Who has the body? Who has the emotions? Who do they belong to? Who has the mind? Who do those thoughts belong to? In what container are those things arising? And that's what's really important to see, is that in the container of conscious awareness, in the container of the self, the higher self, all of these things arise. They come out of that space. So who is there beyond thought? Who exists prior to thought? That is who you truly are. You can't look any further back than that. You can't observe the observer, because you are the observer. You can observe the mind, you can observe the body, you can observe the energies, you can observe all of those things. You can observe everything in material nature, but you can't observe the observer, because that's who you truly are. You can't observe the higher self within you, the most primordial, first, supreme thing in your system. You can't observe that, because you are it. but we can see how we align with it. That we can observe. And we can get some inkling as to its character, its nature, because it's going to mirror what we then feel the most connected to, what we then feel happy when we come in contact with. Because the self is in here experiencing the good, the bad, the ugly. It's experiencing all the different frequencies. And the further away that frequency is from the very nature of the self, the worse it's going to feel. And so the closer to the nature of the self that frequency is, the better it is going to feel, which is why we have an indicator. We have an internal little indication system, much like the indicator on your car in your gas indicator. You know when you're full, and you know when you're empty. You know when it's too hot in the radiator and when it's just right in the radiator. We also have a little indicator inside, and that indicator is the gift of emotions. That indicator is the gift of feeling. We have our feelings for a reason. We have our emotional self for a reason. That's not to be cut off. That's not to be halted in any kind of way. And people who want to cut off their emotions, there's something deeper, that needs to be addressed there, because our emotions are literally telling us the health of our being. And if we're experiencing negative emotions, sadness, depression, anger, frustration, worry, fear, a feeling of separation, any of those things, it just means that we aren't in contact with who we truly are. We are not aligned with our essential nature. And then when we feel things like love and happiness and joy and ecstasy, peace, tranquility, clear seeing, all of those things come from being in alignment with who we truly are. And so it gives us an understanding that our essential nature is those things, but our essential nature doesn't discriminate. Our essential nature doesn't say, this is better than this. It doesn't cherry pick. It doesn't say, this shore is better than that shore. No, the ocean or the lake touches all shores equally. The sun doesn't shine on what it thinks is beautiful and not shine on what thinks is not beautiful. It shines on the good, the bad, and the ugly, all with the same radiance. Just like the higher self within us shines on everything equally. So it doesn't have any conditions upon which it's not going to give its love. It's not going to turn away from one person and look at another person. It doesn't have those qualities. It doesn't possess those qualities. So you are that unconditional love. You as the observer. Think about the part of you that is beyond mind. It just watches. It just sits there and watches. It doesn't have preferences. It doesn't choose. It observes. It watches. It is the space in which everything in material nature is contained. It provides the space for material world to manifest, for thoughts to manifest, emotions to manifest, actions to manifest. That is why in yoga it is called Sat. Sat, S-U-T, Sat. Sat is a Sanskrit word which literally means the basis, the very essence of something, the substratum upon which things will exist. And in yoga, it is said that the higher self is Sat, Chit, Ananda. Chit is consciousness, that conscious awareness, that you inside who is just watching absolutely everything. That is Chit. And that chit is sat. It is the very substratum upon which the thoughts manifest, the emotions manifest, the physical being manifests, the actions, the breath, the body, everything in material nature exists upon that conscious awareness resting in sat. And then ananda. Ananda is bliss. It is bliss. The bliss and the joy, the ecstasy of resting back into the essential self. Patanjali said, you minus your mind is yoga. We can't go any further back in our self than the mind. Who watches the mind? Who watches that? We don't know. We can say that there's something that watches the mind, and that is the observer. That is the sat chit. But who watches that? We don't know. If there's something, we don't know. But to go beyond the mind and just rest in that space, that is what we call shanti. That is peace. When the mind stops, when it stops all of its churning, that is true peace. To rest back and just to feel the frequency of that unconditional space. That brings ananda, bliss. We experience that a little bit in nidra, in sleep. Deep sleep, dreamless sleep. When we resort back, we draw inside and back behind the mind. The mind goes to sleep. And we experience the feeling of our essential nature, but there is darkness because we're not fully connected. We're not fully aware of our essential nature. So there's darkness. But we can experience that space, and we all love to go to sleep. We all love that space of deep sleep. It's joyful. We almost don't want to come out of it. It's rejuvenating. It's peaceful. That is your essential nature. That's your essential nature. And it's unconditional. It unconditionally loves you. And it unconditionally loves everything in material nature. It doesn't judge. It doesn't have opinions. It's the mind that wants to give opinions. Source, God, all that is, it doesn't have opinions. It doesn't cleave one thing from another. That's the mind. And anyone who says that God does those things is placing human limitations upon something that doesn't have those limitations. God is all loving. You are all loving. So just rest with that. And I'll be talking more about this if you want to join us. I'm having a workshop on Saturday, May 2nd. Saturday, May 2nd, coming up. On the Yamas of Yoga. The Yamas talk about love. We're going to talk about this more. We're going to go deeper into this, really, really, really deep into this in a 2-hour workshop and discussion together. So if you would like to join me, you can go to my Instagram. There's a link. I'll also provide a link in this video. You can check out the link at the bottom in the comments of this video. And you can see the link for registration for the workshop. And we're going to go deep. We're going to dive deep into what Patanjali from the Yoga Sutras, he's labeled 5 yamas. There's actually more yamas. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika actually goes into a lot more yamas. Vedas go into a lot more yamas. Upanishads go into more yamas. But Patanjali has named 5 that he deems the most important. And we're going to go into why. We're going to see what they are, how one leads into the next, and how they all support this concept of unconditional love. So I hope you'll join us. Jai Bhagwan.